Girl bosses have taken over Hollywood and mainstream media in the last few years. Strong female characters have always been around, but the last decade has shown us women that are better, women that are insufferable, women that are arrogant, all wrapped up in a messy package of inclusion and diversity that fails to tell a good story and, in fact, turns audiences away. And it seems as if every female character in the last 10 years has followed the same narrative. It certainly doesn't help that the actresses playing them feed into this narrative and berate fans who question and criticize, suggesting that they simply aren't progressive enough, or that the film wasn't made for them, and then act surprised when the ratings are so terrible. But because the studios are so far removed from the opinions of fans, these movies and television shows continue to get made, all at the cost of the goodwill of the fans and the tarnishing of iconic IPs. This is a major reason that fans are turning away from Hollywood to projects that are made by overseas studios and foreign directors. It's why foreign films are doing so well at the box office, and small indie studios are beginning to make waves. We have seen this song and dance before, and they have nothing further to tell us with this tired diatribe. I have seen enough girl boss characters to the point that every time I see my own gender on screen, I am usually able to tell what sort of female character we're going to get, and it's exhausting. Case in point, I recently saw War of the Rohirrim, which I was initially interested to see when I first heard about it, but was very disappointed to learn that instead of the story being about the historic figure of Helm Hammerhand, it's instead about his daughter Hera, who is nothing more than a footnote in the notes of Tolkien's lore. And an entire character was created based on the mention of her existence. The writers chose to regard this as utilizing a character that Tolkien ignored, even though she didn't matter at all to the greater world of Middle-earth. I have been bored and bewildered by films I've seen this year, but this is the first time in 2024 that a movie has enraged me. Not because Hera is a quintessential girl boss, not because she is better than every other male character around her, not because she is better in combat and a better strategist than her peers and is ignored until it's too late in the film. No, I was livid because this was a story that was utterly meaningless. They managed to take the legend of Helm Hammerhand, a very interesting tale in its own right, and make it into a feminist manifesto about a woman who had no contribution to the history of Middle-earth. The deaths of her family were simply used as a footnote in her story, a way to apologize to her, as she was the only one in the end who could save Rohan from their enemies. Hera, who didn't even have a name until the creators of this movie gave her one, combines the characters of both Theoden and Gandalf in this movie, calling on the Great Eagles to aid her, dueling Wolf in single combat, and defeating him because the laws of biology don't apply here anymore. She is both savior of Rohan and somehow forgotten about. The movie explicitly states more than once that history does not remember her, but gives no reason why. There's also a great deal of emphasis placed on Hera's desire not to marry and remain free, even though it's never really stated why marriage is such an unappealing idea to her. And in their desire to quickly put out a project so they can retain the rights to Lord of the Rings, Warner Brothers has produced the most meaningless project of 2024. In the original trilogy, there was great emphasis placed on the deaths of the characters. People like Gandalf, Boromir, and Theoden, and even Denethor had deaths that were notable and worthy of mention. The death of Helm Hammerhand was utterly meaningless in this story, and only happened so that Hera could be the last woman standing to lead Rohan to victory. There was no reason for him to have not gone through the gate with her, so that he could command the armies and call for reinforcements and the War of the Rohirrim, instead of being about a man for whom the fortress and horn was named after because of his breaking of the Dunlending ranks, stalking men like a snow troll and slaying them with his bare hands, became about a woman who fought in a wedding dress against a jilted prince, therefore cementing the feminism and patriarchy destruction that this movie and so many others are all about. There have been a few exceptions in 2024, particularly with regards to Dune Part 2. Lady Jessica and Princess Irulan were quite interesting to me. Both were incredibly strong women, but the farthest definition from a girl boss that you can be. Whether or not they are good and moral people remains to be seen, because Lady Jessica did a good job keeping her cards close to her chest, while also playing the role of Bene Gesserit leader and cultist, spreading the word of the coming Messiah to the Fremen. Princess Irulan, though her role was small, was so different from other female characters that I have been force-fed that she was a breath of fresh air every time she was on screen. She is not a warrior, but a politician and a record keeper and historian. In fact, All of the Bene Gesserit I saw in this movie were very interesting. They are not overt or ham-fisted, they were subtle but extremely powerful, working behind the scenes to bring about a prophecy that is thousands of years in the making, and I can't wait to see more of them in upcoming movies and shows. Another example would be the characters of Glinda and Elphaba from the recent Wicked film adaptation, which I saw not too long ago and thoroughly enjoyed. Elphaba represents a strong character who is not overstated or arrogant and still retains a sense of right and wrong, still retains a desire for love and friendship that she manages to achieve with Glinda before the end of the movie. Likewise, Glinda represents a character that is as far from your average girl boss as she could possibly be. She's feminine and a little ditzy, but also the sort of character that wants to find love just as much as her friend does, and when she and Elphaba do decide to strike up a friendship, she's also incredibly loyal. It's a direct contrast to the in-your-face, emotionless, soulless characters that have been shoved in our faces for far too long, and it's because there are good actresses playing these women, but also the writing that's clearly coming from a professional that creates them. This writing isn't coming from an activist or a corporate-approved stooge who takes orders and collects a paycheck, but someone who has a genuine love for the source material and a desire to create a good film before any rules of representation. Can we get more of that, please? Can we get more women who are thoughtful, considerate, nuanced, and maybe even kind? Can we get more women whose goals are not to just stick it to the man, or rule a kingdom, or destroy the patriarchy? Call me crazy, but I'd kind of like to see love stories again. Stories where women have a cause that goes beyond breaking records or barriers. Stories where love is celebrated for the wonderful thing that it is, rather than as an old-fashioned ideal that modern people have moved beyond. It's not wrong to show a thoughtful, nuanced love story with well-written characters that the audience can get behind and that humanizes the couple. These days, if any type of love story is written, one part of the couple has to be either a side piece or a fawning servant whose only job is to worship the ground the girl boss walks on. Otherwise, it's this fan fiction version of love, where the girl who is perfection meets the bad boy and they have this weird song and dance, will they, won't they sort of relationship. The girl either wants to redeem her love interest or else kill her love interest, and there's this bizarre sexual tension the whole time that just throws me out of the storyline entirely and creates laughable and absurd characters. I understand that there used to be a problem with female characters only ever wanting love, particularly in books, and so the pendulum has swung back. But we've gone well past center at this point to something that is almost entirely unrecognizable. An ideal has been created that is some weird, twisted version of a female archetype mixed with all the traits that would be considered toxic in a male, being loud, obnoxious, arrogant, condescending, the best at whatever they do, and so on and so on. But maybe the worst part of the girl boss character is something I briefly touched on earlier, but didn't fully explain. And that is that the girl boss is impossible to form a relationship with. And I'm not just speaking about the relationship that these characters are supposed to form with the audience, but about the characters that surround the girl boss as well. It makes them distrustful and angry and spiteful to the characters around them, alienating them from friendships, loosening their morals, and turning them into lone wolves that read to the audience as a cautionary tale. Believe it or not, people like seeing connections form between other people. It's the most natural and normal thing in the world. We like seeing people form friendships and fall in love and deal with the messy natures of human beings. It's the reason that movies like Terminator are so poignant, even decades later, because the savior of mankind in John Connor was formed through human connection. The Terminator is actively sent to destroy the savior of mankind before he could be formed through the love of Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. Same thing with The Matrix and the emphasis on reality versus the simulation. Human connection has been denied, and instead, the fundamental aspects of being a human have been reduced to a sanitized world that is hallucinated by the humans connected to the pods. It's not until they begin to wake up and form connections with the other humans who have also realized the truth that they become dangerous and need to be stopped. But the more I think about the nature of the Hollywood girl boss, the more I realize that it hasn't just become a war of real women versus the robots and planks of wood that have been shoveled onto our plates. It's become a war against true human connection, both for the characters that surround the girl boss and for the audience watching the girl boss on screen. The girl boss possesses traits that actively prevent her from forming connections with other humans in her life, unless they are connections of deference. There is always something about her character that prevents her from being a real human, whether that's narcissism, a tragic childhood that creators use to justify every aspect of her terrible behavior, or a genius pedigree that surpasses the former hero that she is meant to take the role of. the girl boss stands alone. And this is not only a very unrealistic storyline for a lot of audiences, it's also a very depressing one too. The best stories are the ones about human connection, how love and belief in each other can drive people to do incredible things. It's not just romantic love that I'm talking about, but the love and respect that a student has for a mentor, and the hope the mentor has for the student. The love between family members and close friends that drive a narrative just as much as the plot does. Relationships are messy, but they're interesting and relatable, and the worst thing that the girl boss has done is remove the ability to deal with those messy relationships because the audience is being forced to reconcile the fact that the girl boss has moved beyond the need for those things. She's already perfect at whatever she does, so why would she need a mentor to teach her? She's already a great warrior, so why would she need anyone to protect her? She's already a high-powered leader, so why would she need anyone else to lean on? One by one, all connections but the most superficial are stripped away until you only have the ones who hang around the girl boss to worship her and try and receive a little bit of her attention. It becomes about a queen leading her subjects with complete control and an iron fist. Does any of that sound like a story that is at all interesting? Does any of that sound like it could be a timeless story? Certainly not to me. And that is the reason that girl bosses need to be written off. They are poison to a storyline and to the necessity of human connection that a lot of people are drawn to. And that's why movies and shows that continue to feature them will flop again and again and again. As for the rest of us, I will suggest keeping a shrewd eye on the movies that don't feature this pathetic trope and rewatch the old classics as well. I guarantee that you will find something to watch that is far more worthy of your time. For right now, though, someone get me out of this simulation. I hate it here. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section and let the conversations begin. Until next time, everyone.